This is the Janine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Janine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Janine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Joining us is a political leader. He's the CEO and chairman of GoPac, and he is a good friend. I have known him for many years. He's the guy who's always in the trenches, running around the country, working with local and state leaders to not only get the local and state leaders elected, but to work on the national and help the national ticket as well. He's a seasoned communications professional and a political leader, and he's a frequent guest on a lot of national television shows, including mine when I have my Saturday night show. Okay, David, look, first of all, welcome, but I want to talk to you about where we are. It is Sunday morning, and we are in an incredibly tight race. How's it going? What's going to happen?
You say it quite well. We are in a very tight race, and there's no better example of that than you look at a state like Wisconsin, where in 2016 and in 2020, the winning candidate, Trump in 16, Biden in 20, won by 1 percentage point. What's that equate to? That's 25,000 votes. 25,000 votes in the state of Wisconsin are going to be what determine who wins that state, and ultimately will have a huge impact on who our next president will be. And, you know, if you can say today where those 25,000 votes are going to go, you should go to Vegas and make yourself a lot of money. But even if it went from 1% to 2%, you're talking about a state with millions of residents. 50,000 people are going to have a big say in who our next president's going to be. And that ultimately is who turns out, who actually goes and casts a vote, whether it's early, whether it's absentee, whether it's on election day. That's going to have a big impact. And not only would that be the case in Wisconsin, it'll be the case in Michigan. It will be the case in Pennsylvania. And those, you know, folks want to talk about, so many pundits talk about North Carolina and Georgia and Arizona. Those are states that we as Republicans, those are traditionally and historically our states. That's putting us at ground zero. The battle is in those 3 states we just mentioned, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And that's why you see that Pennsylvania is getting more advertising dollars from the 2 presidential campaigns than all the other states.
All right, and David Avella, let's talk about Pennsylvania. So this past week, Volodymyr Zelensky ends up going to a munitions factory in Pennsylvania. I mean, talk about, you know, having a national, an international leader involved in our politics. I was flabbergasted, and it was so blatant that the Democrats are like, yeah, we're going to bring this hero in. I mean, what was your take on that, and how will that impact Pennsylvania?
It will have no impact on Pennsylvania, particularly if we Republicans focus on the fact that her energy policy would be devastating to the state of Pennsylvania. And
but David, she wants to frack now.
She wants to frack at least for the next 2 months, 6 weeks. There is nothing. I mean, keep in mind, Judge, you can't get away from what the Biden-Harris administration has actually done. Remember, they are the ones tapping unnecessarily into our oil reserves because philosophically they think we need to be getting rid of and moving away from fossil fuels. That's what this administration has worked 3.5 years for. And whether it be making it harder to produce energy in America or, as I just said, you know, taking steps like tapping into our oil reserves so that those are gone. So we have to start looking for other sources of energy and buying it from folks who don't like us. That's what they've actually done, not what she's actually talking about right now.
But here's
voters
the
in Pennsylvania
problem.
Need to be told that.
Here's the problem. She's actually saying, you know, that she's into fracking, and she is also They've tapped the oil reserve. It's like the lowest. It's like half of what it was when Donald Trump was there. And yet, they say, oh, no, we're doing everything we can to promote it, which is a lie. And by the way, statistically, according to the polls, they see her as a change candidate. So as hard as we try to connect her to Joe Biden, I think the public is seeing her as somebody new, according to the polls. Am I wrong? Tell me.
You are correct in that they didn't want Joe Biden, and so she's not him. So check the box. Okay, she's not him.
Okay.
We have to continue putting out and telling folks her actual words. We don't have to make up her words. We actually can use her words, what she has said previously, not during the last 3 months of the presidential race, but what she has stood for, what she has voted for, and what she has actually said in previous years. We remind folks, again, you're talking about such a small sliver of voters who are persuadable to go one way or the other, or are truly still undecided. And it's hard to believe folks are undecided at this point. But you still do have a percentage of voters who are undecided, not sure what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And we have to give them the information to help them make the right decision in that Republicans governing would move us away from the disastrous policies of Biden and Harris. Well, we have to continue pounding that message.
Yeah, but you know what? It's funny. Sometimes I think everyone's singing to their own choir, David Avella. But, do you think she'll pay a price, Kamala, for not picking Josh Shapiro, not just in Pennsylvania, but around the country, because there are those who believe that he was like everyone else. The only difference was that he was Jewish.
You and I have talked about this before. Walz was picked off the tradition or what has been the standard operating procedure of presidential nominees, both sides, quite frankly, for the last, at least in modern times, which is you keep the base happy. Mm-hmm. You put someone whose governing philosophy and style is the same as yours. And whether that be Barack Obama with Joe Biden, whether that be Tim Kaine with Hillary Clinton, whether that be President Trump at that time with Mike Pence, who philosophically they were aligned and worked together. I mean, just go back through history. It's about keeping the base happy. And that's what she did. And that's why Tim Walz got selected, because as crazy as it may sound, he is more progressive than she is.
There's no question he's more progressive. He wants tampons in boys' bathrooms. I mean, and the guy is a liar. I mean, he ditched his battalion before they went to Iraq. He said he carried weapons of war. He never went to war and carried weapons. I mean, he's not even a coach. He was an assistant coach. I mean, and it goes on and on and on. But nobody seems to care. Is the hatred for Donald Trump that great that people like Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC will say, I don't care if she makes sense. She's not Donald Trump.
It's funny that you bring her up in that this is Stephanie is apparently or bills herself as a journalist to report the news, and yet then makes comments like you just pointed out. And yet she gets the second interview of Vice President Harris after Oprah Winfrey. I mean, you can't make this up.
Well, look, Harris is only going to go with friends. I mean, even Oprah had to say, well, can you answer the gentleman's question?
And then she doesn't, and they move on, right?
Yep.
It's and you think about that. There's the domestic policies which drive most Americans' vote. But you think about the foreign policy side. We know so little about her governing philosophy when it comes to what she would do as commander-in-chief. And that doesn't mean she's not qualified to be commander-in-chief. We just don't know what approach she would take if she were commander-in-chief. And given how unstable the world is, there are going to be a sliver of voters that will concern them and should concern them.
Well, when you say we don't know what approach she would take as chief, I mean, I can't help but remember when she visited Ukraine. I think she was in Poland, and she was asked the question, will you take refugees from Ukraine? And she went, ba-da-bee, ba-da-bop, ba-da-bum. And then the Polish prime minister started to answer, and she said, a friend in need is a friend indeed, and cackled. I mean, we know what her approach is. She's a leftist. She's a leftist who is incompetent to discuss world issues. I looked at a map, and I know where that country is. I mean, really? Am I wrong, David?
We're saying the same thing is that we don't have any idea what she's going to, because she does not. She's not articulated. She has not articulated a governing philosophy.
Yeah, but based upon the way she has acted as a DA, as attorney general, as a senator and vice president, whether it is the fact that, she is into bailing out criminals during the 2020 riots and who then goes on to kill somebody, or whether she wants to decriminalize the border, or whether as DA she had a program for illegal immigrants so that they could get out of felony crimes, and she's in favor of sanctuary cities. I mean, you've got to be able to put her in a particular circle. I mean, has she been capable at all of discussing any issues?
Well, add to, you had a great roster of some of her best hits. Add to that, given her position on immigration, is there any belief that as president, she is going to call the president of Mexico or any of the South American countries and say, look, for us to keep working together, you have to get a hold of things in your country and have folks follow the process for coming to America? You think she's going to do that? Absolutely not. And now you have Mexico talking about the Panama Canal is not serving trade well, and they want to create their own route. Now, I from a trade perspective, is that good for the United States, or is that not good for the United States?
Yep.
What's her position on this?
Yes. You're never going to know. You're never going to know. And by the way, I'll tell you what her position is on world issues, David Avella. She was the last one in the room, okay, on Afghanistan. And if that isn't probably the most embarrassing situation that occurred on a military level, by moving out of Bagram, which was a base, and moving into a one runway in Kabul, and having the military leave before the civilians left. I mean, that says it all. She doubled down on it, so that's her position. 13 Americans died, and they didn't even call the families. And if they have, they've done it recently, when it's 3 years since that happened. All right, final thoughts, David Avella. What are you working on now? Where are you going? Where is GoPac going? Tell us what you're doing.
Well, we're working to help get a number of 8 state legislators who are running for Congress, getting them here to Washington. Tim Moore in North Carolina and Briley Moore in West Virginia, not related. Working to help Tom Barrett up in Michigan, which would be a pickup opportunity for Republicans.
These are Congress?
In Pennsylvania. These are all for Congress.
Yeah.
At the state level, not unlike the presidential. I mean, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, all the battleground states at the presidential level also happen to be where we're fighting for majority control at the state level. And so ultimately the work GoPac's doing in the congressional and in the state level ultimately have a big impact nationally. And that's why this is so rewarding to work on.
Well, there's no question that what you do is you pretty much are building the foundation at the state and local level that obviously benefits us on the national level, and obviously with the congressional races as well. David Avella, I want to thank you for taking time out to be with us, and I am sure that we will be talking to you before the election. Get out there and get those votes. David Avella, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Take care. And always remember, we promised that we would never forget. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org.
This is the Judge Janine Show.